Ah, New York City. The Big Apple. It's the city of dreams, and the place you go to make a name for yourself, as Frank Sinatra once said. But before you start packing your bags and heading straight to this miraculous city of dreams, there is a couple of things that you need to know about. In reality, New York isn't always everything it's cracked up to be, as you might see in movies and TV shows. From the crazy high prices for rent to having one of the highest crimes rate in America, here are the top 10 reasons to not move, or let alone even visit, New York City. Number 10, the massive population. You don't just move or even go to New York City and expect to get a heartfelt welcome from this city. Honestly, it doesn't really care about how you feel because this city is way too overcrowded. There is approximately 19 million people living in New York City. That's almost 4 times the population of Chicago. Manhattan alone holds a population of 8.4 million people. But the residents aren't the only folks you're going to have to contend with. On average, there is 65 million tourists which visit the big city every year. So when you go there, be ready to see a lot of people. And I mean a lot. Number 9, horrible subway system. New York City has the best transit system in the world. Well, at least that's what the newspapers would have you believe. Though I don't think New Yorkers would agree with that, but in reality, this city has a very bad reputation for its underground transit system, subways, and trains. As we said, this city has a massive overpopulation issue. Not to mention, most New Yorkers don't even own cars, so the subway platforms are exceptionally overcrowded. While the train is still the most convenient and cost-effective way to get around the city, this quote-unquote best way of transportation is unsurprisingly vulnerable, often hindered by an endless supply of construction delays, outages, and rerouting. Plus, there aren't many New York City subway riders who can't think of at least one dreadful experience where their train ride was sitting in the middle of a tunnel, in the dark, for several minutes because of technical difficulties. Oh, and don't even get me started on the traffic. Number 8, have fun finding a job. If you think that you can find any sort of job that you want after coming to the big city, then you might want to reconsider moving here. As we mentioned earlier, this city does have a huge number of people living in it, so the competition for the limited number of high-paying jobs is very tough. This ends up making finding a job a daunting process. A lot of the time, people with very good credentials, degrees, skills, and certifications have to resort to low-paying jobs just to make ends meet. So don't be surprised when you can't find a job that matches your skill set. And with this never-ending pandemic going around, many companies have even stopped hiring people altogether, with some companies even firing large portions of their staff or reducing their hours to nearly nothing. Not to mention, the state is ranked second for having the worst climate for business, making it even harder to find a low-level job in the city. Number 7, people's attitude. Don't expect to have nice long conversations with the people of New York on a sunny day, as most New Yorkers make the phrase rough around the edges hit home. They are absolutely blunt when making any sort of conversation because they have places to be, things to see, and people to greet, and won't stop to think for 2 seconds about passing you by in a heartbeat. City life can get quite stressful, and it definitely shows in the way that they care about themselves. They walk fast and don't like to be stopped for petty talks. It is what it is, and if you had all the problems this city has to offer, wouldn't you be blunt too? Number 6, a workaholic city. If you manage to find a job somehow after moving to this city, don't sigh in relief just yet. The people in New York City are workaholics, and why wouldn't they be? Everyone comes into this city with the dreams of going to the top, and with the tough competition, you can't simply reach your dreams without working as hard as you can. Which, even then, doesn't exactly mean you're going to be successful. Too bad the New Yorkers don't know that, and with many locals working over 40 hours a week, you're going to discover it isn't uncommon to meet people with 2 or even 3 jobs, or as they like to say, side gigs. This city is the perfect fit for you if you love competition, working hard, and consistently stressing out about the smallest things. Number 5, the government is a mess. With the sheer number of people living there, there's bound to be long lines for just about everything. From getting food to getting on buses to just even trying to get your license, everything in New York seems to be a hassle. Which means going to the DMV is surely to be an all-day process. Remember that scene from the Oscar-winning film Zootopia where they entered the DMV in broad daylight and leave in the middle of the night? Well, that's gonna be you. It's pretty frustrating, right? Sadly, there's really nothing you can do about it with a city the size of New York, so be sure to finish all your tasks before going to any government offices for any sort of help, because you're going to be waiting there for a very long time. Number 4, the crime rate. According to the most recent numbers from federal government statistics, violent crime across the United States is on the decline, as it was for New York City. But sadly, it seems to be on the rise yet again, and according to NYPD statistics, in September 2020 alone, they have made the highest number of gun arrests since 1994. Moreover, there have been an increase in the number of shooting accidents across the city. Murder and burglary incidents have spiked more than 35% in a single month, not to mention all the riots and shutdowns going on as well. Sad as it is to say, this is just considered a, quote, normal day in the life here. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't exactly consider having a gun in my face wanting to become a part of my daily routine. Number 3, very bad traffic. Ugh, don't even get me started. Well, if you think the subway's bad, you're in for a real treat. As far as right now, with everything going on in this COVID pandemic times, the traffic is a lot less than it normally is, but still, you'll probably get across the city a lot faster if you just walk instead of taking a car or cab. Actually, for most New Yorkers, walking a couple of miles or more is just part of the daily routine. If you take the bus, car, or taxi before some urgent interview or meetings, just be sure to at least leave an hour early to be able to be there on time. New York makes every list ever created for the worst cities to drive in the US. Why do you think so many people choose the subway? Number 2, living expenses. You can't just grab a couple of $100s and walk right into the city. Maybe once in the far distant past that was possible, but now it's more than impossible because New York is so expensive. In fact, expensive is an understatement, knowing the fact that New York City holds the 6th position on the list of the world's most expensive cities to live in. Even everyday things are expensive in the city. According to a survey in 2019, the cost of living here is 22% higher than the national average. If you aren't making anything more than over $100,000 a year, then chances are you're either going to have to choose between living homeless or, at the very best, get used to living in a super downsized lifestyle to just be able to make ends meet. Lastly, number 1, renting a place. By now, you probably got a good idea as to what it takes to live in New York City. And if you thought that the living costs are crazy, just wait till you check out what it takes to even rent a spot. The reason that you're going to need to be making around $100,000 or more a year in New York City is because it's expensive to even rent apartments. If you don't plan on living under a bridge or even in a park, you can expect inflated housing costs well above the national average. In fact, 400% to be exact. The average rent alone for a 2-bedroom apartment in New York City is $3,500 a month, which is twice the national average for a 2-bedroom apartment. Want to own your own place? The average price of an apartment in downtown Manhattan is $710,000. Not to mention that New York City has some of the highest taxes on apartment buildings, which get passed on by landlords and to unhappy tenants. So, no surprise there, it's the most expensive city in the US. And with that, it ends our list of reasons why it's a horrible idea to move to New York City.